This morning, I want to talk to you about where is your treasure. Some of us have a little bit, some have more, but where is your treasure? Is it on the earth or in heaven? I thought of changing the title to Is more of your treasure in heaven or more of it on earth? So we're going to look at a parable that Jesus told in Luke chapter 12, verses 16 through 18 and onward. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. He might have been an Amish or something, when you look at their farms, wow. Every building is in perfect repair, and they do well financially. And so he was a very successful farmer, and he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. In other words, the harvest had been so amazingly good that his normal storage was not sufficient. And so he was facing a problem. What am I going to do? And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. Now, it seems a little strange why he needed to tear down his barn. Maybe he had limited space or something. You would think he would just build another barn, add to the one he had. But anyway, Jesus put it that way, which again was very wasteful, and this man was not a good thinker in regard to treasure in heaven. And so he was rather wasteful, tearing down these barns and building bigger barns. Then it goes on. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. And I don't know whether he was less than 65 or what, but there are people that retire less than 65. They have enough, and so they don't worry about what the future is holding, and they just want to have a good time with all of what they've earned and been able to put away. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? Now he didn't give a thought to that idea. He didn't dream that that night he was going to die. The very night that he was planning to tear down his barns and build bigger ones and live the comfortable life from here on till however long he lived. But God knew something he didn't know. And that's the same thing we don't know. We don't know how long we will live. We might live to ripe old age. My parents lived well into their 90s, my mother almost to 100. But we don't know how long we're going to live. And so we don't want to be making plans like this man did in view of not knowing. And then it comes to the lesson that Jesus really wanted us to get. So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So the individual that lays his plans primarily for life on this earth, which I'm afraid encompasses most Laodiceans, that the primary focus of their life is to prepare for this life. And they hope to still get heaven as well, but they're planning primarily for this life. As a result of so much planning for this life, they're not rich toward God, and they don't put much treasure up in heaven. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 21, Jesus also said, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt." Now, we don't take that, we need to look at all the things that God says. We're not believing that the Bible teaches have no savings. But this man had, way beyond what he needed. And so, if he was going to do that, he was subject to the dangers that are being spoken of here. First of all, moth. Now, most people have such a big closet that they cannot wear all of the clothes that are in that closet fast enough. And so one day they look at their clothes and the moths have eaten some of them. They got holes in them. They can't wear them. It doesn't look nice to wear clothes that have moth holes in them. And then, of course, if it's a piece of equipment or something else, we have so much equipment and we come to use a piece of it and it's rusty and it doesn't work. I've had cars that needed fixing and they sat so long that when I went to try to fix them, the wheels wouldn't even turn because things had gotten rusty there. And so here is another loss that Jesus said, don't lose by these methods. And where thieves break through and steal. Now, I've had a few things stolen in my life, but not much. I've been blessed living on a campus. I think people are a little more afraid to come in and steal. They don't know who might catch them while they're going around the campus. But nonetheless, it's subject to loss through being stolen. And I think we're headed for more stealing. As more people struggle, the way they view it is, well, I don't have what I should have, and they have more than what they need, so it's okay for me to steal what they have. That's the mentality. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Again, the same lesson that he told in that parable. He said, there's only one safe place to put your treasures, and that's in heaven. Try to get as much of it in heaven as you can, because you will suffer no loss if it's in heaven. And then there's a bonus. Because you have so much treasure in heaven, that's where your heart will be. You will want to go there. You will want to enjoy the treasures that you have placed up there. And of course, basically, there's only two things we take to heaven. And so the treasure has to be put into those things. One is our salvation, and the other is the salvation of others. And so if we get to heaven and there's a lot of people that we have been instrumental in seeing saved, then it's going to be a really exciting time, a real happy time, because these people are so thankful that we gave the money or we went to do something to help them get to heaven. And this will be the treasure that God is talking about that cannot be lost. It's a forever thing. Now, I don't know whether you've read the chapter in the first testimony is called The Two Crowns, but I'm going to read it from another source, but I think it would be worthy reading to read that chapter. It's quite thought-provoking. But I'm going to read just one paragraph from it. Then that which I had seen was explained to me as follows. So this vision of seeing these two crowns, and then what does it mean? The multitude who were so eagerly striving for the earthly crown were those who love this world's treasure. So one crown was the earthly crown. And there are three ways that we can reach out for that crown. Money and things that money buys is one way. Honor is another one, to really have people of the world think we're wonderful. And I forget what the third one was. But all of those things, unfortunately, most of the people in this vision were striving to get that one. And are deceived and flattered with its, and this is very key, short-lived attractions. You know, the devil knows how to make things look really good for a very short time. But on the long term, they either get boring or they, we go on to something else, or we find out it has hurt us and damaged us. And so it's very short-lived in its attractions. I got into this mode just before accepting a call to go to Wildwood. I wasn't rich at all. My parents were extremely poor, but I was able to get good jobs, and I liked fancy things, and so I got a Ford Galaxy convertible 500. It was back when they were really big cars, and I didn't have it all paid for, so I had to make payments, but I was looking forward to getting a boat because I like to go out on the water, and I was anticipating that purchase. But fortunately, I began to notice something, that the only time I really enjoyed those kind of things was, number one, when I was anticipating getting it, and number two, a short while after I had it. And then it was just ordinary after that. It was nothing unusual. The short-lived attractions of this earth, and there's lots of them that can get us to spend money on things that we either don't need or take up time that should be spent with something else. But I praise the Lord for being called away from that lifestyle. Some I saw who profess to be the followers of Jesus are so ambitious to obtain earthly treasures that they lose their love for heaven. You see, the problem here is time. We only have so much time. And how we spend that time determines what the outcome is going to be, whether heaven or to be lost. They lose their love for heaven, act like the world, and are accounted of God as of the world. So God has to accept our choice. He sees that we're not really that interested in the things of heaven, and so he has to count us as children of this earth. Going on, it says, they profess to be seeking an immortal crown, a treasure in the heavens. So these people still talk about going to heaven. They still expect to go there. And yet, when it comes to their time, they're spending most of their time with the treasures of earth. But their interest and principle steady, is to acquire earthly treasures. Those who have their treasures in this world and love their riches cannot love Jesus. The reason is he won't accept a divided heart. So either we love him with the whole heart, or we try to love him and try to love the treasures, but it doesn't really work, and we end up losing our love of Jesus. They may think that they are right, and although they cling to their possessions with a miser's grasp, they cannot be made to see it or to feel that they love money more than the cause of truth or the heavenly treasure. Now, this church, from my experience, has been a very giving church, and it's been a great blessing. Whatever we wanted to tackle, we were able to do. But as we see the end approaching, it might be that we have to even make changes from our past practices and to get more into the treasure of heaven rather than the treasures of earth, because we're headed to more stormy times, more stealing, like I said, a more desperate need for people to learn the gospel, and there's just some things ahead that should cause us to really be more in earnest about where is most of our treasure. Do we have most of it still here, or is most of it in heaven? And seek to improve what goes in heaven as much as we can. In Counsels from Stewardship, it mentions 3 areas, because not just money that we have to consider. In page 116, paragraph 5, it says, "We claim to be Christians, waiting for the second appearing of our Lord in the clouds of heaven. Then, what shall we do with," and here's the 3 things, "our time, our understanding, our possessions?" So, let's look at each one of those just briefly. Is most of our time spent building up treasure on earth? Or is most of our time spent in seeking to transfer treasure up into heaven? We want to evaluate that in light of what the future holds. What is the best use of our time? And along with that is time for our own study to, become acquainted with the truths of heaven so that we can share with others, and so that we can it can be easier to live the Christian life, and so on. I've always been, since that call, in self-supporting work. And of course, you work hard, usually 8 hours or more a day. My job required usually more than 8 hours a day. And so, I've often dreamed of leaving an institution, and with what I have learned, to live on half a week's work, and in order to spend the rest in doing some form of work that's going to lead to people getting to heaven. Well, our time is a big one. Next one is our understanding. Here it has to do with our thought processes and our mental outlook on life and all these things. What are we developing? Are we developing our ability to understand God's ways and what He would like us to do, and how we should conduct whatever we do along His lines? Is that where we're spending most of the time? Or are we spending the time to acquaint ourselves how to succeed in this world? I've, often thought of that as various boards discuss things. Sometimes I feel like saying, has anybody read what God said we're supposed to do on this? Because it seems like so many even institutional boards and groups, they get together and they talk about what I think and what you think and what's the best thing to do, and nobody knows what God said about what we're supposed to do. So there's a huge lack there with our understanding because of where the time is being spent. And the third one we've talked about already, our possessions or our bank accounts or, whatever that we have. Then what shall we do with our time, our understanding, our possessions, which are not ours, but are entrusted to us to test our honesty? Now there's a very important concept that probably everyone's heard about, but do we really look at all that we possess as really not ours? If we do, it makes a difference, because we pray then, Lord, what do you want us to do? Let us bring them to Jesus. Let us use our treasures for the advancement of his cause. So I believe now is the time that we must be looking for anything we can spare in all three of these things. We must be looking, how can we invest more in the bank of heaven? More of our time, more of our understanding, more of our possessions. And if I read correctly, before the close of probation, as far as our possessions are concerned, we want to be close to zero. Because whatever we don't get down to is going to be wasted. The moth is going to eat it, the rust is going to get it, or it's going to be stolen, or worse yet, we'll read one outcome that people are going to have that's even worse than that. There is danger ahead. It says, there is danger of losing all in the pursuit of worldly gain. And if you read that chapter, you'll see that these people that were Seventh-day Adventists, basically, I believe, but probably other Christians are doing the same. They were reaching out for both crowns, trying to get the crown of earth and trying to get the crown of heaven. But they never could get the crown of heaven. They couldn't even get the crown of earth. They couldn't get either one because they were trying to get both. There is danger of losing all in the pursuit of worldly gain, for in the feverish eagerness for earthly treasure, higher interests are forgotten. The care and perplexity that are involved in laying up treasures upon the earth leave no time nor desire to estimate the value of eternal riches. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I was listening on the radio one time and someone was talking about this principle, and they said, if you buy it, you got to dust it and then you got to grease it. And so the more stuff we have, the more we have to spend time taking care of what we have. We had a lady at Wildwood one time. She was a very interesting lady. She was the exact opposite. She lived in a very small cabin, one-room cabin, I think, plus a bathroom. And when you went in, it didn't give you the feeling of being full. It had, what she felt she really needed. And she was constantly giving away things because, she felt, well, I don't need this anymore. And she cut her possessions down to very small scope. And I thought, that's interesting that someone would do that in this age of the world. She's passed away now, but she must have learned some things that maybe some of the rest of us could learn. Here's the end of that quote from Counsels on Stewardship 2:17. Your thoughts, your plans, your motives will have an earthly mold, and your soul will be defiled with covetousness and selfishness. Does that sound very good? Now, the people that are going after the earthly treasures primarily, that's how they turn out. But the people that are going after the heavenly treasures are the exact opposite. And then it adds this text, which I'm sure you've heard. What shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? So, probably no one here will ever come close to gaining the whole world. I think if our family, my wife and I, had gone into business for ourselves, I believe we could have been a millionaire if we had done as well as we've done in self-supporting work. We could have been a millionaire, but I am much happier not being that, because I'm not sure how I would have used it. But, there are people that are really moving up there in gaining the world. There's probably, half a dozen people or maybe a few more. And yet, in the end, they're going to be sorry that they traveled that road to try to gain the whole world and find out that they lost their own soul. Plus, many other people were lost as a result of it. In the book Desire of Ages, page 495, it says, "And as they went out in their master's name," this is now talking about the disciples that after Jesus left, they were going out to reach the world. They were doing the same program Jesus was doing, and God hasn't called every Adventist to do that, which is basically just trust God for your support. He hasn't called all to do that, but all are to be involved in putting treasure in heaven. "And as they went out in their master's name, facing reproach and poverty and persecution, they often strengthened their hearts by repeating his injunction spoken on his last journey. 'Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom.'" In other words, whenever they were wondering where they were going to get their next meal from, whenever they were unable to buy the things their neighbors had or that other people had, they said, "Well, it doesn't matter, because we are putting treasure up in heaven, and one day it's going to be worth it all. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approached, neither moth corrupts. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Well, I see our time is gone, so I'm going to stop there. But there is much more information. I had a few more things to share. But as you think about this parable, it's so easy to see how foolish that man was when he wanted to tear down his barn and build a bigger barn. And yet, are we building up our possessions of earth and unable to give the time that we need to give to the advancement of his cause? I believe that God is calling us because of COVID-19. It's a real reminder. We are in this community, and we need to reach this community, which will take time and it will take money. Now, this afternoon at 3:30, if you can go, they'll appreciate getting the word out. But as time goes on, there's going to be more time needed. And if we're so tied up with just maintaining our life, how will we be able to put the time into it? And also, if we have excess money, there'll be a moment when some of that will be needed to carry forward the plans in reaching this community. And so I believe that it's time for us to climb to a higher step in this matter. We've been certainly better than most churches in just taking care of whatever needed to be done. But God is calling us to a higher standard in view of the mission that's in front of us and in view of the trouble that is coming upon the world. Why not give it if we're going to lose it anyway? Amen. You know, I mean, like the young people say, that's a no-brainer. If they come along and they take away the currency that we have now and give us a different currency at a different level, there's going to be a huge loss and a huge outcry from people when that day happens. And someday that's going to happen, I believe. I don't know when. It's been prophesied for a long time. And we don't know when. But, and we don't need to scare everybody into giving. That's not the best way anyway. But it is a reality that we need to be aware of. And so it's time to be praying, Lord, how can I get more of my time? How can I get more of my intellect involved in the things of heaven? And how can I get more of my possessions into the treasure up in heaven? Because that's one time you'll never be sorry for your decision. God will give you the desires of your heart, and throughout eternity you will have the joy of getting acquainted and visiting with those that your time and your finances and all have helped to get into their heavenly home. So may God bless us as we move forward. We're starting now in a more serious way. COVID kind of held us up, but we're going to be doing things every month in our center now. And so may God bless us to really put everything we can into it to see the kind of success that will make God's heart happy.